Module 3: Identity and Self-Concept. Outline of the module. When we talk about identity, we would like to know, who am I? That's why we have identity cards to prove our identities. On the ID card, there are names, numbers of ID card, addresses and your adorable photos. But the cards do not show the real parts of yourself. Everything seems like very surface for others who may not know you at the first sight. Sometimes, individuals show different identities when tackling two different types of people until they may lost from getting back to their real self. In general, identity is a broader concept than self. Terms such as self-concept, self-esteem and self-worth. Identity is about the general sense of people themselves along with their beliefs and attitudes. Most of the time, the researchers will interchange the uses of self-concept and identity. Hence, to make life easier, we will interchange the self-concept and identity in this module. Erik Erikson is one of the well-known American development psychologist and psychoanalyst who born in Germany. He studied psychoanalysis with the daughter of Sigmund Freud, who called as Anna Freud. Erikson served as a professor at Harvard University and Yale University, although he did not graduate as a bachelor's degree holder. He was best known for human psychosocial development theory and created the phrase identity crisis, that means failure to achieve ego identity during adolescence. Erikson offered framework for understanding the needs of young generation in relation to the society. Erikson's psychosocial theory highlights emergence of self, search of identity, relationships with others, and role of culture throughout life. Erikson suggests developmental crisis faced by each individual in Erikson's 8 stages of psychosocial development. Developmental crisis is a specific conflict where the resolution of each crisis prepares the method for the upcoming stage. Erikson believed that the method will lead to lasting effect that influence an individual's self-image and view of society. When an individual grows up and is getting mature over time, the developmental crisis in every stage becomes more complex until the end of life. All stages align with the increasing network of interactions and relationships with others. This is where psychosocial development takes place, that emphasized by Erikson. Based on the chart, we can see that each stage has distinct conflict and an individual needs to resolve those conflicts to develop essential skills for a strong sense of self. People develop sense of self since they born. As we discussed in previous module, puberty occurs during adolescence. The changes of physical and cognitive become more significant during puberty. Adolescents start to think consciously about, who am I? That will provide a concrete basis in later life. In short, the word psycho in psychosocial stands for personal development, which Erikson emphasized the connectivity between personal development with social environment in his psychosocial theory of development. He believed that an individual can become a better competent in personal and social when the individual comes across the crisis by resolution of crisis. In this video lecture, I am not going to explain the Erikson's 8 stages of development in details. But I would like to invite you to watch some interesting YouTube video clips based on the Erikson's 8 stages of development that is credited to Sprouts and Ryan Ehrman. The link addresses will be embedded in this module and the learning course. It is common that adolescents start to look for their identity as they begin to think abstractly and understand others' perspectives. Erikson defines this crisis in the 5th stage, that is identity versus role diffusion. According to Woolfolk, 2013, identity refers to the organization of individuals' drives, abilities, beliefs and history into a consistent self-image. whereas James Marshall expanded the Erikson's theory of identity formation to the identification on four identity statuses that focus on to process in forming a mature identity, such as exploration and commitment. Exploration indicates the process where adolescents look for the alternatives in beliefs, values and behaviors to obtain the most satisfaction. Commitment refers the adolescents' selections concerning political and religious beliefs and acts as a result of exploring the options. Identity achievement refers to the person commits to the selections that made by himself after exploring the realistic options. Most of the time, adolescents rarely achieve this status after graduated from high school, but continue explorations even reaching at early 20s. Moratorium adolescents often in the midst of struggling of selections. They delay in commitment to personal and occupational choices that is not uncommon among modern generation. Erikson believed that identity crisis occurs among adolescents in complex societies. Note that both identity achievement and identity moratorium are said to be healthy during identity formation of adolescents. Foreclosed adolescents commit themselves to the goals, values and others' lifestyles without tested with different identities or exploration of alternatives. They tend to be rigid, intolerant and defensive. Lastly, adolescents without conclusions and less hope for future will encounter identity diffusion. No exploration and no commitment take place. They may be passive and withdrawn. Therefore, it is important for parents, teachers, schools and even community to provide a platform for the adolescents to experience with tasks that required interpersonal skills such as community service to encourage the identity formation among adolescents. Next, before we discuss about racial ethnic identity, let's us think what are racial and ethnicity. An ethnic group or ethnicity is the members within a population group that share common nationality or cultural traits as their identities. A race is the members within a population group that possess various sets of physical and genetic characteristics in nature. For instance, there are 3 races in our country, but we are in same ethnicity as Malaysians. To develop ethnic identity among the nations, Jean Finney describes 4 outcomes for ethnic minority youth. Assimilation can take place where young generation fully adopt values and behaviors of majority culture and reject their own minority ethnic culture. Besides, the process of separated may occur only when minority young generation associate with their similar culture groups of people. In addition, marginality describes the feelings of alienated and isolated among the minority youths to live in majority culture and cannot mix well with majority culture. Finally, biculturalism or integration can be the alternatives of minority youths to maintain their ties to both majority and minority cultures. Previous studies reveal that people who adapt the biculturalism are prone to have higher self-esteem and academic achievement during adolescence. One of the examples of racial identity in Western countries is nigrescence. William Cross and other researchers devised a framework that addresses African American racial identity into 5 stages such as pre-encounter, encounter, immersion or emersion, internalization and internalization commitment. In fact, identifying a racial identity can be complex than that of multiracial among adolescents, as they may be affected by the environment and people surrounding them such as their families and neighborhood. It is important to promote the racial and ethnic pride among young generation as positive self-concept about racial and ethnic heritage to form stable identity. Studies reveal that students who possess positive and optimistic racial identity will to higher self-esteem and fewer emotional problems. They feel proud of and appreciate their racial identities and are more competent in problem solving. In short, majority and minority groups should respect the heritage of each other to sustain a harmony environment for future generation. Self-concept. When you stand in front of a mirror, what do you perceive yourself? Do you focus more on your appearance or the inner self of you? According to Harter in 2006, Pajaz and Shunk in 2001, self-concept is an individual's knowledge and beliefs about themselves, such as ideas, feelings, attitudes, expectations. In fact, our self-perceptions change from situation to situation over the stages of life. For students, especially during the stage of adolescence, academic and non-academic self-concepts may affect the motivation in education. The self-concept evolves through constant evaluation on themselves in different situations. Strikingly, most of the time children tend to have positive self-concept, but it does not last long when they encounter challenges and problems in competing with other peers. Children with better knowledge about pronunciations of words tend to have positive reading self-concepts. Over time, teachers can notice that students with high reading performance maintain positive reading self-concepts, whereas the students who cannot really read well tend to have low reading self-concepts. Therefore, we believe that the children's early experience with school reading tasks can strongly affect their self-concepts. Sometimes, this impact can last long unless the students look for the alternatives to improve their reading skills and rebuild their reading self-concepts in future. During middle school time, self-concepts tie with physical appearance and school achievement. Most of the time, the students overlook their own abilities rather than their physical appearance and school achievement as they become more realistic. During your school life, do you feel proud of your high performance subject? Do you always compare that subject among your friends? Here comes two effects explain the phenomena of comparison within self and others. First, it is called as Big Fish Little Pond effect, BFLP. Students who are strong in mathematics in average schools feel proud of their mathematics skills than other students who are in high-performing schools with same mathematics ability. Imagine there are School P and School Q. The average mathematics results of School P is 65 and that of School Q is 80. Alex is from School P and Benson is from School Q. Both obtain 80 marks in a national mathematics examination. Alex's result is considered very outstanding among his friends in School P. Alex therefore feels better of his mathematics skills and possesses higher academic self-concept than Benson, who just hits the average mark of School Q. Another phenomenon is called as Little Fish Big Pond effect, LFBP. For instance, Amy is originally a regular class student who joins in gifted and talented programs for several months. After 1 month, she found that she is far left behind from his gifted and talented classmates. She shows lower academic self-concepts over time as compared to similar students who remain in regular class. Self-esteem. Self-esteem is an effective reaction that is an overall judgment of self-worth that includes an individual's confidence. But what are the differences between self-concept and self-esteem? Both seem very similar in context and are self-minus terms. Basically, self-concept is a cognitive structure. People tend to ask the questions such as, what is your belief about yourself? And who you are? It is about thinking on how do you perceive yourself in cognitive perspective. For self-esteem, it is an overall and general feeling of self-worth and summary judgment about your worth and values as a human. It is about valuing on how do you evaluate yourself. To build self-esteem, individuals should attribute their accomplishment to their own efforts and actions rather than their luck. An individual will obtain satisfaction and figure out his or her worthiness to the achievement based on their efforts and abilities. This is to get rid of easily giving out and being pessimistic when facing to failure. When we look at the self-concept and self-esteem in sex differences, we can notice that the high school males are more competent in mathematics and sports activities. whereas the high school females perceive that they are more able in reading and close friendships. Perhaps it correlates with the child and adolescence development that females develop verbal abilities earlier than males, whereas males are more advanced in developing mathematics skills. Yet, the situations may vary over time when they are exposed and influenced by other factors such as personal effort and ability or guidance from teachers. As we mentioned before, the self-concept and self-esteem can be varied over time. The most important thing is how is your self-esteem level and how do you perceive yourself to make yourself a better and well-rounded person in future.